Welcome back. Unpacking here on The Full View, special programming today, the economic recovery plan that was unveiled by the president earlier on. We're getting various reactions. He said that this economic recovery plan will include a social compact on the state-owned power utility. President Ramaphosa also touching on the re-industrialisation of the manufacturing sector to stave off foreign imports and focus on local production. South Africa needs to guard against the erosion of its social contract, though, say some pundit. It needs to undertake seriously the task of delivering on the constitutional promises and bridging the inequality gap, lest the majority of its population rescinds the social contract and goes down the nasty and brutish path of chaos and civil conflict. Well, to find out if the president was able to stave off some of the negative sentiment, certainly outside of the markets, but broader society, Dr. TK Pooe is a senior lecturer at Wits School of Governance. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us. So, Dr. Pooe, what are your thoughts on this? The president's heavy emphasis on saying we have turned the corner, and pretty much almost sounded like he's saying we are signing a new social compact contract with South Africans.
Well, thanks for having me. I have three takeaways. I think let's start with the positive. I think the actual realization that local manufacturing needs to be the bedrock of any economic development plan. Even though in 2019 in Sona he said the same thing, I think the COVID reality has really brought this into stark focus. Now, whether we have a new compact or not, it depends what does he mean by the word compact, because he uses it so often that I get confused, because every time he seems to give a major speech to the nation, there's a new compact coming out. So for me, that's what was missing, is that there's really nothing new in what he said. If you look at these previous sonors,
so allow me to stop you and let's zero in on exactly that. What exactly does he mean? The actual meaning of it, South Africa, for instance, entering into a social contract which is centered from the Constitution as a foundation of political legitimacy, of governmental authority in exchange for a promised improved quality of life for all citizens and for human rights. At this point, people are rather skeptical. Looking at COVID-19, it has been noted that it made glaringly obvious the huge inequality levels in South Africa. The poor are getting poorer. It would seem that those who have come off better are the bigger, richer companies. So in what he's presented, can we say that according to that original understanding that we have now signed a new social compact?
No, because again, the reality, and I like the way you preposition it, the reality is the market and employment. Until we actually see a huge cut in issues like unemployment and inequality, there is no such thing as a compact. What we have is government speaking in the form of the president, as well as he means, but yet the majority of people are not feeling this. Hence, I always ask the question, what does he actually mean by a compact? Because I think sometimes we make the mistake of assuming that the new president is so new that none of us have recollection of when he actually came into government. He's actually one of the longest serving NEC members in the ANC from 1994. So the key question here is not a new compact, it's what are they going to do differently to the mistakes that they've been making for the last 2 decades?
And that's the whole thing. So basically what the president is saying, and he certainly implied that by saying that we have turned the corner, please trust us, things are going to be different when it comes to the management of corruption and holding people to account. So he's basically asking the people of South Africa to completely surrender their freedoms in terms of having an opinion on the management thereof, and saying, yes, indeed, we do agree that we will subject ourselves to the law and order which the government provides, that of social security and prosperity, which obviously people would disagree, especially against the backdrop of COVID-19 corruption.
I think you'll probably know most South Africans will not buy into that proposition, because again, he said this again in 2019 when he came in to say, listen, there's going to be a renewed push against issues of corruption. And I think sometimes we should, yes, it's good to see that the hawks are out and about, but the real, and again, the proof, as the English saying goes, the proof in the pudding is when we see people actually in orange overalls, people going to jail, when you see money going back to the state from corruption. So I think he knows that South Africans are not going to simply buy into the narrative which says, trust me, trust me. It needs to be something, we need to get something in return. And unfortunately, in this concept of this compact, we're not really getting anything back.
So just looking at some of the reactions from the political parties, I think it was the Freedom Front Plus that said we need to do away with for instance, race-based policies, when we're speaking about employment equity. One of the things that the president said in his promise was that we shall not rest until we have a new economy based on fairness, justice and equality. Is it something that he can truly promise at this stage? We speak about the growing Gini coefficient. We speak about the fact that people who previously didn't even have opportunities now have less opportunities. How do we talk about mass employment if the unemployed are not going to get employed to begin with?
I think it's good to be optimistic, but I think we have to also be honest among ourselves, especially as a population, not so much government, that, look, this turmoil that COVID has caused, and even before COVID, we're talking about it's going to take about another 10 years for us to recover. I say this because sometimes when we make this analysis, we actually seem to forget that there's another world outside South Africa. If you look at how the EU is doing and how America is doing, which happen to be some of our largest partners, they're not doing so well. And even the Chinese, their great recovery, while it's notable, it's actually not going to be, we're not going to feel the impact of it in the next year or so. So what we actually need to be doing at this current moment in time, which I think is missing from your speech, is how do we get the state and those employed in the state to actually work to a level where, when, God willing, the economy is starting to work internationally, we can actually get the dividends from this. If we're talking about a real one, I'm talking about a real recovery plan, I've actually just written an article saying two things could have actually been done. And hopefully, if time allows, I will probably touch on these two things.
Thank you so much for speaking to us and sharing your insights. Really appreciate it, Dr. T.K. Pooe from the Wits School of Governance. After the break, we'll continue with some more reaction to President Ramaphosa's reconstruction and recovery plan.